Kim Brown, also known as Kimmy Cakes, and I'm here to bake with you again today. And today we're going to make vanilla cupcakes. The recipe that we're going to bake today is called a one bowl type recipe. So it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to be able to make our cupcakes in a bowl, and it's not going to require a mixer. And it's really tender and really moist. We use some vegetable oil that keeps it, it has a really nice crumb to it. So let's get started. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna measure out all your ingredients. I have on the website, there's a recipe you can print out or refer to, and it'll have all the quantities for you. So if you can't write down everything while we're talking, don't worry, you can refer back to the website. The other thing you're gonna wanna get together is a mixing bowl, a whisk. I like a flexible spatula. I have a little measuring cup that I'm going to use to scoop the batter into the cupcake liners. You're also going to use a cupcake tray and the little paper liners that you use for cupcakes. If you didn't have a cupcake pan, you could use a baking sheet and you could just set these little cupcake liners on the baking sheet. But I'd recommend, if you had the cupcake pan, to use it. It'll keep your cupcakes structure. They won't kind of glob over a little bit. So what you are going to want to start off doing is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. While that's preheating, we're going to mix together our ingredients. So I have a 1 1/4 cup of flour. So I'm going to put that in. Then I have a cup of sugar, and it's just white granulated sugar, and I'm going to put that in. Then I have 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. Put that in. This is what makes it rise. So I'm going to make sure I get all of that in there. Then I have 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. So if you've baked with me before, you know that I like to use kosher salt. It's not quite as salty tasting. If you use table salt, use less, maybe a 1/2 teaspoon or even a 1/4 teaspoon. Otherwise it'll taste pretty salty. Then those are our dry ingredients, anything that's not wet. We're just gonna whisk that together. Okay. Then we're gonna add our buttermilk. So I've got a 1/2 cup of buttermilk in here, and buttermilk gives it a really nice tang, and it makes our cupcakes what they call tender. So it'll make them really moist and really soft. Now, if buttermilk's hard for you to find, I will put on the website a substitution for buttermilk that you just use regular milk with vinegar added in it. And I'm gonna give you those quantities on how to do that on the handout. So I'm whisking that in. And it's gonna still be pretty dry at this point, but we just wanna whisk that in. Now we're gonna add our other ingredients. So I've got a 1/2 cup of water. I just used it from my tap. I've got a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and in there I have 2 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla. It sounds like a lot of vanilla. I've tried it with less, but my son has informed me it's much better with the 2 1/2 teaspoons. Then I have 1 egg. Put that in there. And then I'm gonna do some whisking here. Make sure you get that egg yolk broken. So I'm whisking. See, it still looks a little lumpy here, so I'm just gonna use a little elbow grease and whisk until it's not lumpy. It comes together pretty fast though. This is a pretty simple recipe. Okay, it's looking pretty good. See, do you see how nice and smooth that is? It looks great. Okay, I've done my whisking. I'm going to show you what it looks like. All right, I think you can see that. So it's nice and smooth, which is great. And then I'm going to get my cupcake pan. This recipe makes 1 dozen, so 12 cupcakes, which is great because then you don't have so many hanging around. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill my cupcake liners. Now you only want to fill them about 2/3. That's just a little over halfway filled. If you fill them all the way to the top, what happens is when you put them in the hot oven, the heat makes the baking powder activate and rise. That's what makes your cupcakes really puffy and yummy. If you fill it all the way to the top, they'll go over the cupcake liners, and it might be a little messy. Those parts will burn. So just 2/3 of the way. So I'm just going to keep doing that, and then they'll be ready to bake. All right. So then I already have some that I've made that are ready to frost, but I'm going to show you what they look like done. So these ones I didn't bake quite as long. There's no touch of brown on them. I would bake them till they look like this. I don't know if you can see the little bits of brown on them. This is a hard recipe to overbake, but if you underbake it, it will taste, you won't enjoy the texture as much. So a good way to tell if your cupcake's ready is when it's in the oven, you just press it and it should spring back. You can also use a toothpick and you poke it in, and when you pull it out, none of the crumbs will be sticking. Okay, so next up will be the vanilla icing. I'm back to ice the cupcakes that we made, the 1 bowl vanilla cupcakes. They've baked and they've cooled, and we're ready to ice them. So one thing that's really important that you do is make sure that your cupcakes are completely cooled. If they're even a little bit warm, what will happen when you ice them is it will start to melt all your icing, and then it'll just slide right off. So make sure that they're all the way cooled before you start. So I've made some icing here. I've included the recipe that's on the handout that you can find on the website, and I'm just going to tell you really quick how you do that, but you can also buy icing. There's so many good kinds at the grocery store that you can go ahead and buy, and it's a lot easier. This icing's very simple though. It's 2 sticks of butter, and again, you want it to be room temperature. So butter that I used for this has actually been sitting on my counter for a few hours because you want it to be really soft. So I happen to have a stand mixer. You don't need that. You could use a hand mixer. So you put the butter in a bowl and you'd mix that up till it's fluffy. Then you're going to add 1 pound of powdered sugar, and they come in little boxes. So I just put the whole pound in, and I turned on my mixer and I let that mix up. Then what I added was you're going to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk. I used regular milk, but you could use any other type of milk if you happen to not drink milk. You could use oat milk, you could use rice milk. And again, for the butter, if you don't do dairy, you could do plant butter, and that would work well too. So then I also added some vanilla, and I added a teaspoon, but if you like it to be a little more vanilla, you could add 2 teaspoons. This would be a good time too, that if you like different flavors like lemon or something like that, you could add lemon extract. So I've got my icing. It's a nice consistency, meaning I'm gonna put it on my cupcake and it's gonna stay in the shape that I want it to. So I have a little spatula, but you could do this just with a plain old dinner knife too, okay? This is called an offset spatula, but I'm gonna put some icing on. Depends on how much you like. And I like to hold the cupcake in my hand like this and just kind of turn it and smooth my icing out. I kind of like it smooth on the sides, but you can do it any way you like. Now, if that's hard for you, and I've practiced a lot, you don't have to pick the cupcake up. You could have the cupcake, put it in front of you, put the icing on it, and you could just swirl it around till it's covered. I like to cover the exposed parts of the cupcake so that it's completely covered. You don't see the cupcake. That way it locks the moisture in from the cupcake. If you leave the edge of the cupcake showing, that's where it'll start to dry out a little bit. So I've got those cupcakes here. I'm gonna do one more. I'm just gonna little frosting on here. you can decorate them with sprinkles. I have some sprinkles here. I love sprinkles. They're very happy. You could put cut up nuts. All right. You could also use those colored sugars too. That would be fun. Great. And they're done. Enjoy.